Three cuts of Java. So my name is Vincent Mayers. I am a Java champion, an open source steering committee member. I'm a Java user group leader, and I'm a conference organizer. Okay. However, I'm not a software engineer. I just play one on TV, and I'll get into that in a bit, and it'll become apparent as to why. Okay. So the title of this talk comes from this book by Greg Mortensen and David Vallon. Three Cups of Tea. Anyone heard of this book? Okay. So you're probably familiar with some of the backstory, but for those of you who aren't, Greg was a mountaineer, a climber, and he was climbing on K2 in the Himalayas, and he fell and was injured badly, and managed to get to a small tribe, and local village rather, and they nursed him back to health. He was there for some time because he was pretty badly injured, and while he was there recovering, he saw the children outside scratching in the dirt beside one of the houses. And he was watching what he thought was their game. And then his host said to him, "This isn't a game, this is their school. This is their classroom right here in the dirt. And they're scratching their lessons." And he was so impacted by this, and so grateful for the hospitality and kindness of this village, that he decided he wanted to build a school in the village. Okay. Then he realized he had to build a bridge over the river so you could build a school to get the materials there. And this started what became a global nonprofit to build schools, predominantly for girls in the Hindu Kush, in the mountains between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And this was done during the height of all the conflicts there. Okay, and this book gave such an insight into the culture and the psyche of the people that lived there, that it was actually required reading for military commanders in that region for some time. And Greg did all this with the collaboration of the Taliban forces on both sides. Very interesting. Sadly, a lot of his he's been discredited. Not necessarily his backstory, but he kind of like there's some controversy about what he did with his nonprofit fiscally, shall we say. But the premise remains. Now, in this book, there's a quote, okay, and it says, in Balti, in Pashtun culture, the first time you share tea with someone, you're a stranger. The second time you take tea, you're an honored guest. And the third time you have tea, you're family. Okay. This has bearing because I want to talk about the importance of the number three as it pertains to all this, and I'll tie it all together soon. So the number three has significant kind of mathematical, psychological, and cultural significance. All right. In religion, in Christianity, you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost as the three main elements. In Buddhism, there's the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. In Hinduism, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. In mythology, in Norse mythology, and if anyone can pronounce these better than me, please keep it to yourself, right? There's Niflheim, Muspelheim, and Canunga Gap. Niflheim being the land of ice giants, Thor. You guys seen that? Muspelheim is a bit in between, and Canunga Gap is the land of fire. In Greek mythology, you have Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades as the three main protagonists, or antagonists, depending on how you say it. In Egypt, Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Now, in literature, Aladdin had three wishes. You see where I'm going with this? There were three bears, three elven rings. It gets better. So in science, observable matter is seen as solid, liquid, or gas under stable conditions. If there are any biochemists in here, please keep what you know to yourself. But for the purpose of this, under stable conditions, all observable matter is either solid, liquid, or a gas. In biology, there are three nucleotides that determine the genetic code of anything. In your eye, the perception of color relies on three types of cone cell in the retina. And there are three of those, short, medium, and long, and they are red, green, or blue. All right, I get that three is important. All right, but what on earth has all this got to do with community? Let's look at this. Let's look at this quote again. The first time that you share tea, you're a stranger. The second time you take a cup of tea, you're not a guest. And the third time that you share tea, you become family. So briefly looking at community over the ages, in early communities, 10,000 BC, around there were three main drivers in primitive societies: shelter, food, and security. People gathered for those three main reasons and stayed together for those three main reasons. You fast forward to the Neolithic period a bit later, and then you start to see people domesticate animals. There's more stability, and they start to farm more. These are three main drivers. Around in the classical area, about 500 BC, you started to see things like in Greece, the rise of democracy, concept of civic duty, and the inception of city-states. In the Han Dynasty, in about the same period in China, global trade, because of the Silk Road opening east to west, was a primary influence. Technology and then art. So the first seismograph and wheelbarrow were attributed to being developed in the Han Dynasty in China, as was porcelain and paper. Now, fast forward 1,000 years, medieval and early modern in Europe. I'm from Europe, so some of these references are, well, where I'm from it's a long story. Mostly European. In medieval societies, feudalism, manualism, and religion. So religion underpinned everything at that time. The church was very powerful, and you had earls and barons that built their little, basically their castles, okay, manors, and they had serfs and knights that fought for them with other castles. I mean, you have these two castles on one side of the valley, and they would just fight each other constantly. Feudalism. Early modern communities, you start to see the rise of nation states, mainly due to advances in transportation technology. You could travel further on ships because the ships got bigger and better. And that led to colonialism as well, because people could spread around the world easier, and the rise of industry. Um, here's a little what if, okay? So the Ming voyages, okay, this was something that happened in China in the 15th century, okay? There was an Admiral Zheng He, and he built these 140-meter ships. That's a lot, 140 meters, right? It's a big ship in the 1500s. And these were capable of circumnavigating the globe, but they really traded from China to the east coast of Africa and then back to China. They didn't go any further. But imagine what our world would look like today if there was that much Asian influence in the world at that time. What would it look like today? Just curious, or just interesting anyway. So contemporary societies around 1900 AD, you start to see the rise of suburbia. Again, mostly due to advances in transportation technology, because people now no longer had to live where they worked. They could live further. Okay, so you start to see these populations build outside the major cities and spread. And you started to see more diversity in these communities because people could then come from other countries. My parents were immigrants to the UK from Italy and the Caribbean. I'm an immigrant to the US from England. So people started to come to these major population centers that had outlying centers because it was easier to get around. And then today, in our online community, most of us are online. Okay, way too much, if you ask me. My kids are online way too much. So we have shared interests, and we have, we communicate with each other, and there are rules and norms that govern that. Those are kind of the primary drivers, ones and threes, of our online community. Now, if you go back to this, primitive communities where, shelter, food, and security were the three primary drivers, and you kind of take a little bit of an intellectual leap to where we are today. Has anything changed, or I wonder if what's changed in the last 10,000 years? Or is it just this, but with a computer? I wonder, seriously. Um, let's take a look at this last one. Security, rules and norms, okay? Important for all of us, especially as we gather in groups, okay? So for us, inclusivity is very important. codes of conduct at the gatherings like this, many others, online gatherings, online communities as well have codes of conduct. All right. But what tends to happen, okay, is that here you see this nice kind of multicolored, multi-able, multi-gendered group, and then all the greens get together, and then they're trying to be inclusive, but they become selectively exclusive. Okay. Think about this in the context of your lives, and think if this is if you've ever noticed this happen in any of the communities you're in, whether physical or virtual. Now, who knows this guy, Peter Gabriel? Anyone? Okay, I don't feel so old. Now, he has a live album, very imaginatively called Peter Gabriel Plays Live. And there's a song on here called Not One of Us, which I think sums this up really well. Well, not the song, but the preamble. When he's talking about this song, Peter says, this is a song about groups of people that makes themselves into smaller groups in order to be strong, but excluding others. Okay. It's very important that when we try and be inclusive, we don't become inadvertently exclusive, right? So, you know, we're social animals, all right? We need human interaction for a wide variety of reasons, for cognitive health, for emotional support, longevity. It's all really important. And Gartner has said, and this slide's a little dated, but it's still relevant, that by 2024, only 24% of meetings will be in person. Who's on Zoom all day, or Teams, or Slack, or Huddle, or whatever? No, we all have all of them there. Okay, it's annoying. All right. Okay. Who's noticed it's more now than pre-pandemic? Okay. So we have to get together. All right. And who's this first time at a conference for a while, or since pandemic? Anyone? My first time. First time. Welcome. But you're here, so you're an outlier. Okay. Now, again, human interaction is vital in your work environment, but if they don't provide this, you have to do it for yourself. Okay. And as technologists, in the context of our interest in software, there's various ways that we can do this. All right. We can go to conferences, we can join tech groups, and we can work with our teams, whether they are in person or virtual. So let's look at conferences. What do we do? What are the three main things you can get out of a conference? Okay. Learning, social interaction, motivation. The learning part, okay, because you're here, who checks work email while they're at the conference? I mean, I know I do. I mean, we should try not to, okay, but we all do. It's just a fact of life. Being here should give you a singular focus, okay, especially and who's come in from out of town, okay, so you're away from your home, city, state, you're away from your work. You should have a more singular focus to give you a chance to be in the moment, okay, and absorb everything that's going on and talk to the people around you, without the interruptions of home or work. Learning new skills. And actually, this is interesting. If you've ever been to an event and there's a very popular talk, Adam's talk next door, very popular. He's a great guy. And in a standing room only, okay, say the talk is on Kubernetes, just to pick some. Actually, you know what? Say the talk's on Java, all right? And there's standing room only, and you don't stand at the back. All right, go find another talk. I mean, there's probably more than one thing going on at the conference. All right, go to something that you've never been involved in. Go to a Python talk. Go to a web development talk. Okay, why not? All right, you will pick up something that will help you in your job. It will give you a new perspective on something that you're doing, and you might actually enjoy it and decide you want to build a whole bunch of websites or do some data science and stuff, whatever. But yeah, don't stand at the back. Go find something else to do. Okay, why not? You're there. The social aspect to this, the networking, the collaboration, the relationships that you form. There's a concept called the hallway track. Has anyone heard of the hallway track? Okay, so for those of you that haven't, here there's like 4 or 5 different tracks, different things going on at the same time. The hallway track are the interactions that you have with people between the sessions, over lunch, over coffee, breakfast, maybe at a bar later, if at the after party or something. And It's vitally important that we're not all outgoing. I'm at cancer. I'm typical cancer, and I really want to keep myself to myself naturally. But when I'm in a social situation, I can be outgoing and social, and I actually do enjoy it. But I'd much rather be, I'd much rather be my crab self, right? Um, but what happens when you're in these in at a conference or a tech gathering or something, and you start to talk to someone randomly? Everyone's a nerdy geek, right? Your real world use case is going to come up in conversation. It's just what we talk about, and or your perspective on the talk that you just saw, and the person that you're speaking with, they may or may not have solved something similar or exact same as your use case, or the or they've been in the same talk that you just went to, but they're going to have a different perspective on it. Even if someone hasn't solved the thing in the past, they're going to have a perspective on it that you may or may not have. Okay, and that insight that you get from that one person could be more valuable than any talk that you attended that whole 2 or 3 days. Just think about that for a second. All right. You kind of got to force it a little bit. You don't have to force it. You got to be aware. And I know not everyone's is naturally, hey, let's just go talk to someone I just met or I'm standing next to, but try. Okay. You could find your next hire by doing this. You could find your next job. That's happened to me at a conference. Um, the motivation. All right. So there's reasons that artists gather in communes, okay, because they all feed off their creative energy. All right, someone's doing paintings over here in abstract, and the sculptor looks at that and says, "Oh, that gives me an idea for something that I want to incorporate into what I'm doing." Okay, it's the same. It's the same at a conference. When you talk to other people and you hear new insights and ideas and perspectives, it fuels or it refuels the reason why you got passionate about this in the first place. Yeah, the hello world moment, which I'm sure a lot of people remember, or the first time you ever wrote a line of code for whatever reason. Okay, there was joy there. There was motivation to do more, and over time, it gets to be work, starts to be less fun. Okay, but coming to events like this um, starts to make you remember why you did it in the first place, and can motivate you and make you more creative. Tech groups. So, who's heard of Meetup.com? Okay, if you haven't heard of it, please go to meetup.com because it's a large portal, and there's lots. It advertises lots and lots of things that are going on, all free, well, mostly free, I think, going on around the world in any area of interest that you have, not just technology. So if you're interested in web developments, or if you're in Java, you can go there and you can find a group that might be near you, and you can go and listen to talks and meet people. There are jugs in the context of us being at a Java conference, Java user groups, and there are hackathons that you can do. So on Meetup, there are over 1,300 groups that are connected somehow to the Java ecosystem. Okay, not just the core language and platform, but all the cloud native stuff and things that go around that in over 470 cities and over 80 countries. Okay, if you live in a large metro area and you haven't been to your local jug, I guarantee you there is one. And most of them are back in person. Some of them do meet virtually right now. I encourage you to go. Jugs. So there are over 230 listed Java user groups in over 200 cities in over 60 countries in the world. Jugs, Java users groups. Amazing places to meet fellow people who are passionate about the language and the framework and everything else that goes along with it. And I run the one in Atlanta. There's one here in Silicon Valley. There's one in San Francisco. And they're all over this country and other countries in major metro areas. All right. They're always free to attend. And some of them have, pizza at the meeting. Some of them people will gather for a drink before driving home. And they bring in speakers from all over the country and all over the world. You can see a lot of the speakers that you'll see here this week at your local Java users group, or you could. I mean, I can't guarantee it, but you could. We've had them in ours. A lot of the speakers that are here have spoken at my Java user group in Atlanta. Hackathons. Has anyone been to a hackathon? Anyone? Another thing I would encourage you to do, okay? So this one here is called 48 and 48. It's in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live. And their mission is to build 48 websites for 48 nonprofits in 48 hours. 48 and 48. And they take over some kind of facility, and a whole bunch of people with a very diverse skill set gathers, and they knock out these websites. People sleep there if they want to. They have food and stuff all day, and people work through the night. It's a really, really interesting vibe. Now, in this instance, these are websites. A lot of them may be templated things, maybe built on WordPress or something. Uh, for the sake of expediency, it's hard to build 48 websites in 48 hours. But there are all kinds of skill sets there. There are people who understand data. There are people who understand frameworks. There are people who understand networking and infrastructure. There are people who understand whatever in web development and all that goes into that. You might think, well, I'm a server-side person. Why would I go there? You don't have to code the front end for this, right? But you could join, and you may have a perspective on what they're doing and why that changes how they think about it. And you will learn something, okay? This is why hackathons are kind of cool. And then there's your team, all right? Who's back in the office full time? Anyone? Okay. Hybrid? And then fully remote? Okay. So there are things that you can do if you're in any one of those work situations. There's offsite events, there's lunch and learns, and there's you, which is actually the most important thing. So if you're hybrid or back in the office, it's easy to do this. Okay, you and your team members, you and someone else, could go to a local meet. That you could meet. Okay, you could go to a local meetup. You can meet for lunch. You meet for drinks. Okay, the building of the relationship that extends from work is important. All right, it's not for everybody. Okay, but it is important. You should try to do it. If you're remote, my advice is if somebody works for a large corporation and is fully remote, and then they live in this case, New York City. All right. Chances are there's somebody else that works for that corporation in their area in New York City. They might be on different teams. There's ways to find out if you work for that company. All right. Why not try and meet that person? What's you going to do at lunchtime? You've got to leave the house at some point. What are you going to do in the morning for breakfast? You've got to leave the house at some point. Why not do it with that other person? Because they're probably sitting there going, oh, I wish I could get out of here. Although there are advantages to being fully remote, there are also a lot of disadvantages, as people who are fully remote will tell you, including myself. Right? You could do lunch and learns. Has anyone ever done a lunch and learn at their office, or a brown bag lunch, or had something like that? Okay. It's very valuable because as much as you think you might know the product that you are using from the vendor, let's pick something other than, let's just pick Spring or something. You're not going to know it as well as their product experts. So having somebody in to talk about the ins and outs of what they do, even the core functionality, which you might not be using all of it. You might think you are, but you're not. Or you haven't twisted all the knobs or dotted all the I's and T's that you could. It's very valuable to have a local expert in, or an expert in from that company to talk to you about what they do. Usually, and you can arrange this yourself. You can contact them yourself. You can go to LinkedIn and find an expert, reach out to them. And their company might pay for them to come in. They might be in your city. They might want to get out of their house too. Okay, and be delighted to come and present to your team. And then there's you. All right. Your boss isn't going to do any of this for you. Well, they may, but chances are you're going to have to take responsibility for all of this stuff. Okay, if you just wait for it to come to you, you could be missing huge opportunities. Interestingly, I run a conference in Atlanta, and speaking to people that have or lead teams of engineers over the last year or so, I'm hearing that less and less people are coming to them to ask for approval to go to a conference. Okay, the budgets are still there, but less and less people are actually asking the manager for the approval to go, even to a local one. All right. So you have to take personal responsibility for any of this stuff to happen. All right. So none of this is possible without consistency. All right. And eventual consistency is a term that engineers understand. All right. Now there's this nice quote or snippet by CiliaDB. An update will eventually be reflected in all nodes that store data, resulting in the same response every time the data is queried. Okay, and CiliaDB has a really nice kind of diagram. Yes, there's a technical diagram in my non-technical presentation. I don't like this diagram. Data center 1, node B. It looks pretty boring. Another example I like is this one. Okay, everybody knows this person, right? So I know it's hard to focus right now, but we should finish testing the DB. Okay. The system needs to guarantee eventual consistency. I mean, it does. Eventual consistency is, guaranteed by the second law of thermodynamics. Sooner or later, this will all be a uniform heat bath. Maximum entropy. Maximum entropy means that no useful work will be done. I'm getting a head start on that right now. Now, the problem that I have with these kind of two examples is this. Will eventually. And sooner or later. I don't like this. Okay. You need to accomplish pretty much anything in life, you need to have intentional consistency. Okay. And the thing about intentional consistency is it's really, really hard. But it won't happen unless you make it happen. Okay? Your bosses are going to make you be intentional. It has to come from in here. So let's look at some examples. In athletics, all right, you need to be extremely intentional, all right, to prepare for your competition, the mental preparation, the conditioning that goes into this. It's vital that you're extremely intentional about how you prepare for your competitions if you're an athlete. No brainer, really, right? At work, I like this example because this is something that happened, in my experience. Whenever Quarkus came out, we had a presentation about Quarkus, and a lady that was there at our Java user group, I saw her about 6 months later at another meeting, and she had shared that she had just changed jobs. We're just chatting. Oh, I just got a new job. Hey, congratulations. What are you doing? What are you doing? Says, well, I went to interview for this new job, and the manager or the interviewer asked me if I knew anything about Quarkus. Now, it wasn't part of the required tech stack for the job. It wasn't even mentioned in the job description. And maybe they were thinking about putting it in later, or maybe it's just a random question to see if this person knew. But the lady said, I've never used Quarkus, but I was at a Java user group presentation a month ago where the presenter talked about Quarkus, and it talked about all the benefits. And I think it's really interesting because it speeds up Java and all this. And she later shared that her manager, or that interviewer shared with her, that she was offered the position in large part because of that one comment about Quarkus. Now, again, she knew nothing about it, but she had a perspective. Okay. She had a perspective because she had taken the time. She was intentional about, in this use case, going to Java user group meetings regularly and learn something new every single time, just a snippet. And there was a huge benefit for it. So it can work for you in your professional life. Now, who has kids? Anyone here? Children? Oh God, being intentional with children is really, really, really hard. Okay. Now the support is given, but the boundaries and the habits you have to create and maintain, it's extreme. Well, maybe just for me, I doubt it, but extremely difficult to be intentional consistently about all this stuff, because sometimes you just want to go, ugh. And I have, but I'll try not to. So do you remember this guy? I used to wear this hat all the time at conferences, but I kind of retired it for this hat. I'm not a software engineer, but I do play one on TV. And I say that because I spent 4 years at art school. Right? I have a degree in pottery. And yes, there is such a thing as a degree in pottery. Okay. Now, there is a fancy title, three-dimensional design ceramics, right? It's pottery. I did this for 4 years at art school. Okay. But the reason I chose those three examples and the reason I'm here is I was this athlete. Okay. I spent 8 years doing this full time after college. It wasn't a professional sport because I think they call it semi-pro when you don't get paid for it, right? Something like that. but it's the same thing. So I intrinsically understand how intentional you need to be in order to achieve anything as an athlete or whatever your goals are. Okay. Now at work, I was a tech recruiter for almost 20 years. All right. And around 2000, no, I moved to the US in 2002. But in 2000 and in 1997, I was doing this in London as a recruiter, and the tech stack du jour in the banking sector back then was C++ on Sybase with Pablo to front ends. That's what the kind of enterprise stack for finance was then. Java had just come out, wasn't in wide scale adoption back then. And I remember being, I was doing my sales pitch at a client, prospective client, and it was a bank, and I was like, yes, we can provide these engineers. They know C++, they know Sybase, they know Corba. And he said, stop. What is Corba? As a question to me. And because I knew it was important to understand tech stacks, I said, well, it's common object request broker architecture. And the tool that everyone uses right now is Orbix by Iona out of Dublin. And he was so amazed that I knew. He said, well, you can try and find people for me because you understand the questions to ask. But it made me realize how important it was to have that kind of perspective as a non-technical person, because my job was to talk to technical people. All right. So fast forward some years, and I moved to Atlanta, and around 2004, J2E was like blowing up everywhere in the enterprise. Everyone was using this J2E stack, and I started to sponsor the local JUG, the Atlanta Java User Group. All right, because I wanted to meet people. I wanted to meet prospective customers, prospective consultants. I wanted to learn more about this thing that everyone's talking about right now, and that I was being asked to provide resources for. Very important for me to do that. So I started to go to the Java User Group meetings. I stayed involved for a number of years, and around 2000, I think 2009, when the gentleman that was leading it was leaving to move cities, he asked me to join the board, and I became the treasurer of the JUG. I'm a business guy, so non-technical person, it made sense. And then by default, started to run the conference that we have there every year, DevNexus, okay, which we just had 2 weeks ago. And has anyone heard of DevNexus? Okay, so for those of you who haven't, it's a Java conference in Atlanta. Okay, it's a community-run Java conference. The JUG is a non-profit, and we have 13 tracks every year and about 1,500 people. But it wasn't always like that. It started smaller, and I used to go to other conferences around the world. I'd come to Java One. Okay, I would go to conferences, other conferences in the US, other conferences in Europe, to see how people did these things. I'd never run a conference before. When he said, well, you run the conference, I'm like, well, hour, right? How do I do that? Oh, okay, you need a venue, you need contracts, you need sponsors, you need food, there's a long list. But I started to go to other conferences to see how they did it to make ours, so I can make ours better. And I started to meet people, like some of the speakers you have here. And because I was a conference organizer, I'm accepted in this community of other conference organizers and people that speak at them. And then fast forward a bit more, and I got invited to be a Java champion. Who's heard of Java champions? So for those that haven't, it was a program that was started by Sun Microsystems when Java came out, to recognize people in the community that had made either technical or community impact to the language or platform. And it's kind of Oracle administers it now, although it's kind of a self-managing group, and people can get nominated by the other members to be a Java champion. But again, I got nominated as a Java champion because I was a non-technical person that was heavily invested in the community and spent a lot of my time and my interest and was passionate about helping other people get better at this. I haven't written frameworks or libraries or books. I'd never spoken back then, okay, but I was still invited to join. And then fast forward a bit more, when microprofile, who's heard of microprofile? Okay, just ways to make enterprise JE easier to use, I guess is probably the easiest way to say it. They're an Eclipse Foundation project, open source project, and they wanted to move to the incubation stage, okay, and from the stage they were in, and they wanted to move to incubation so they could release microprofile 3. Now, in order to do that, you have to have a couple of things under the ESF, Eclipse Software Foundation governance. You have to have a working group and a steering committee made up by at least 5 corporate entities. Okay, so microprofile was, and we knew the people that were leading the project. They were looking to try and do this, and they had 4 corporate entities, okay, and Red Hat, clearly, I think Oracle. I can't remember who else, but they needed one more, and they were kind of like coming to a deadline. I was like, okay, well, the Atlanta Java User Group Inc., because we are a business, we run this huge conference every year. We have to be a business. We have to have insurances and bank accounts and CPA. Anyway, um, Atlanta Java Group Inc., a registered nonprofit, we will do this for you. We'll join as a working group member, so we can help you move microprofile forward down the flow of the Eclipse Foundation. So there I am. I've got a degree in pottery, and I end up being a tech conference organizer, a Java champion on an open source steering committee, and speaker conferences at. Why? Okay, because I was intentional about all this. Okay, and I have kids. These are my 2 kids. All right, so I understand really, really well how hard it is to have this level of intentionality when when you have youngins. All right, so but what has any of this got to do with cups of tea? Okay, let's look at this quote one more time. All right, the first time you share tea, you're a stranger. The second time that you take tea, you're on a guest, and the third time you become family. And in order to illustrate this, I want to share the bakery scenario. It's a very well-known technical concept, the bakery scenario, right? I remember being at a long time ago, traveling in the US, I don't know, 95, I think, and ended up in New York City, and as part of the end of a long trip, me and my girlfriend we had no money, we were staying in a youth hostel, and there was a bakery underneath. Okay, so the first morning we stayed in a youth hostel, we went down into the bakery, and we were like, "Hi, can I have a cup of coffee?" There's cat pictures and technical diagrams in this presentation. So I hope you guys are proud of me. Um, Hi, can I have a cup of coffee or whatever it was? Sure. Here you go. We were there for a few days. So the second morning we went in, can I have my coffee? Oh, nice to see you again. I'm glad you came back. Have your coffee. The next day, oh, my friend, nice to see you. Come in, come in. We made fresh baklava. Please have some. Come join us. Now think about this, okay? In the context of your own social interactions, in groups of people where you have common shared interests, okay? The first 3 interactions we usually always got, and not all on the same day, like over time. There's a hi, a handshake, and then a hug. Okay, I've seen it happen in many, many different types of communities in many, many concepts. Concepts? That's not the word I'm looking for, but you get it. But again, think about it for yourselves. So what I get out of all this about being involved in communities is this sense of belonging. I love giving back. Okay, I'm very bad at receiving like gifts. I'm like, oh, thank you. I love giving them. Don't psychoanalyze me because of that. I'm already going through all that with and the collaboration that you have with people around you. Okay, but what are the main takeaways here? All right, it doesn't happen by accident. It all starts with you. If you don't take this action and think about the level of intentionality when you're doing, again, anything in life, really, it will just not happen. The intentionality, again. Now, this is, okay, I'll go forward. This is Hannes Einer. He's a German kayaker, and I use these examples because that was my sport. Right? He was an Olympic champion, I think, where was that? 2020. But this is what it takes, okay? This is Hannes training in the winter. This is no fun. I've done this in this ice. Actually, it's interesting. This training site here is called the Ice Canal. That's ice. That's actually Ice Canal in German. It's near Munich. But this is what it takes, okay, to get here. And you've got to be extremely intentional to cope with this, to get here. And then, remember why you did this to start with, okay? Again, the joy of Hello World, of making something move around the screen, whatever the reason is that you got into this discipline that has kind of informed your career. Remember why you enjoyed it. Okay, you've got to remember why you enjoyed it. That will refuel you to start enjoying it again. All right. So Is it 3 cups of Java or is it really something else? Thank you.